Hello and welcome to Rotted Reviews. And yes, you're not imagining things. I'm back behind the desk for at least just this little introduction here because I have a confession to make. You see, I have not yet actually seen the 2019 version of Black Christmas. There it is. It just kind of last year it came down to timing. It just didn't line up. And as surprised and horrified as I am about how many Christmas horror movies there are, the fact is there's a finite number. And to be able to do these advent calendar video, specials throughout December, it means I can't really go out of my way to watch a Christmas horror movie outside of that time period. I like to kind of keep them off to the side, knowing that I can, tap into them in December when I have the advent calendar going on. So that's pretty much what has happened. And I have done my best, my level best, to avoid spoilers. And holy shit, that was tough. In this case, everybody wanted to talk about it. Oh my God. The little things that I have gleaned is stuff about incels and misogyny and so on and so forth. And I did hear a piece of advice, which was to not think of it like an actual remake of the 1974 or 2006 Black Christmas, and just to kind of take it on its own merits, which I think that's pretty much how I'm going to be watching it. I think that my opinion of the 2006 version, I wasn't terribly favorable of it just because I love the 74 that much, and being a direct remake, I didn't think it held up. But I'm going to keep an open mind with this one. I'm about to watch it, and so I guess this is kind of like a come with me kind of video here. So I'm going to watch it, and I'm not going to do a spoiler-free review. I'm just going to watch it, and then I don't know where I'll be. If it'll be at the desk or it'll be at the green screen, but either way, I'm going to watch it, and then I'm going to follow that up just in a little bit here with my just candid thoughts on it and my score and review and so forth, but in a full spoilery fashion. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, this video is probably not for you. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and watch the 2019 Black Christmas. Wish me luck. Okay. So I just finished watching the 2019 Black Christmas, and I have some thoughts. First of all, I do want to point out, or at least get right out front there, I enjoyed this. I thought it was well written. I liked all the characters. I thought that they were very well developed. I thought it was interesting. I really didn't have a whole lot of problems with this. But let's just get right to the elephant in the room. I can see why some people had some problems with some of the subtext. Some of it subtle, some of it definitely not so much. I personally didn't. And I kind of want to explain why. One thing that horror is really good at is shining a light on issues currently plaguing society, extrapolating on them, putting them in a supernatural sense, and showing us what the problems are and sometimes, how we can overcome them. And we have a pretty major problem going on. We have for a long time. I think it's just kind of starting to really gain the visibility and steps to correct it in terms of accountability. But that problem, I think I can easily summarize as protection of people in power and their immoral acts. That could be corrupt police officers. Yes, what they do is terrible. But one of the larger systemic problems is the protection of them, even just silence. Good officers, good family people doing nothing because of this kinship or this connection or what have you. Anybody in a position of power, boss versus employee, and so on and so forth. And yes, gender roles play a significant portion of that. Men are in a position of greater power than women. Wage inequality exists. Issues with victim blaming exists. There's all sorts of really major systemic problems in terms of gender inequality currently, and it needs to get fixed. So when we're talking about issues such as the difficult one that is kind of the core center of the Riley character in this, which is rape, and the people after the fact that, whether or not they believed her, whether or not they rally around her, support her, blame her, so on and so forth, but basically the entirety of her life that has been shaped and molded around this one evil, just no other way to put it, but evil act, and the people that allow that be a perpetuated immoral activity. Do men come off exceedingly well in this movie? No, they do not. But I'm not going to say that all men deserve that. And I'm not going to say, but I don't think this movie was really saying anything about all men. They had a character even call that out. Well, you're blaming all men. And they're saying, well, we really didn't. We kind of just were talking about this. And I think the movie follows suit with that. They weren't really talking about all men. They were talking about the men that are creating these immoral acts and the ones that are allowing it to perpetuate by protecting the people in power doing them. I'm a big believer in equality. True equality, where every single person on earth is judged on the merits of their character and their actions and their achievements. But I'm also of the belief that the best way to get there is with equity. That equity can lead to equality, and it is a necessary element of it. And it feels odd, honestly, for me to be sitting here as a white cis male basically saying, take power away from me, take opportunities away from me, raise my taxes, make it so that I am lowered so that other people can be elevated. But that's pretty much what I'm saying, is we need to get to a point in which we are helping each other out in a way that can achieve equality, even if that means giving some of ourselves. I have an inherent power. I didn't ask for it, but I have it. And I have to acknowledge that. As somebody that is a white cis male, I have that. I have advantages. And do I elevate my status in life by using those advantages? Yes. I don't lie about it. I do, because it can't be helped. Is it on purpose? No, of course not. I don't walk into a bank, ask for a loan, and then flash them my super secret white man card to get the loan. But the fact of the matter is, I go into the bank to get the loan, I get the loan. And, I want to own a house and so forth, so I apply for it. And do I benefit from it? Maybe in that particular instance, maybe not. But I have no doubt that I have benefited from my position of power at some point in my life, just existing, applying for a job, looking for that opportunity, taking that interview, taking that loan, so on and so forth. There's opportunities abound for somebody that is in my position, but I think it's the duty of everybody that really does truly want equality for everybody to be willing to self-sacrifice a little bit. And okay, so what's the point I'm getting at here? Well, I heard a lot of people talk about this movie as, why do we need a movie that's calling this out? Why do we need a movie that's such a, has such hatred of men and so on and so forth? And I'm basically kind of asking, well, why not? First of all, as far as showing this material and having this kind of, pretty obvious, hit us over the head with a sledgehammer kind of subtext to it, a big part of fixing a problem is acknowledging that one exists. And I got to hand it to this movie. It called out a lot of problems. Yes, with some obvious overtones to it, but some not quite so obvious, some more subtle than that. Just in terms of what we allow to happen, what we turn a blind eye to, showing it in visual representation at the end of the cult ceremony with the climactic act of violence, everybody turn around so that you're not watching this happen, that kind of thing. And then, more subtle moments throughout where the Riley character is talking to the campus security and he's responding. He's like, are you sure about this, this, and this? Because, we don't operate on feelings. Things like that. That level of gatekeeping, that level of manipulation and psychological oppression that is purposefully designed to protect the people in power from potentially immoral acts. We need to shine a light on ourselves. Sometimes that can be a pretty uncomfortable place. But we need to experience a little bit of discomfort so that we can truly acknowledge where the problems are in our society, so that we can recognize that they need to get fixed and what are the next steps to making that happen. And again, one of my favorite things about horror movies is how they shine a light on those. It does for society a lot of what Star Trek did for society by setting it in the future and having a spaceship explore the cosmos and having, situations where they're dealing with somebody that's, half black and half white, but it's left and right, and the next person will be right and left, and they have a feuding war with each other, showing the ridiculousness of this war of pigments. It was able to address situations like racism back in a time where you couldn't talk about that. So horror does a lot of the same thing, and again, it's one of the things I love about it. And in terms of, why have a movie that hates men as much as this movie did, which I maintain, again, it doesn't hate all men. It just is calling out this systemic problem. And as far as why we have this, I would say, why not? We have tons of movies with just really stupid characters doing stupid shit that's not really saying anything. People that are existing just to get hacked up and so forth. And yes, I review a horror movie channel. I love seeing blood splatter and mindless zombies and what have you, but I also enjoy the introspection and the level of conversation that a really well-written horror movie will bring out. And it's not like we're not discussing this. This movie has elicited a lot of discussion, so hats off to it just on that merit. But we have so many movies where we have the ditzy woman and the big, strong hero. And representation is important in art, and cinema is a form of art. So when we're talking about representation in there, which is a big element also of this movie, when we're talking about at the beginning where they're discussing whether or not to have classic literature, it's like, that wasn't my classic, whose classic are you talking about? That kind of thing. That was a good point. Representation is important, and the fact that the Carrie Elwes character, let's just take everything about the movie after that and just focus on that first 5-10 minutes, the fact that he wouldn't include anybody in his curriculum of color or woman or anybody outside of just white men throughout history in his classic literature course, even though there are plenty of classic literature from people of color, women, minorities, and underrepresented, classes that he could have included in it. That's a problem. So yes, representation is important. It's crucial even. I mentioned in a review that I did from a film from Norway just last week. There was a Christmas horror movie. I don't remember the name of it now, but it might come to me. Regardless, just plowing through here. I mentioned that one of the problems that I saw in it is it had one person of color in it. And okay, fine. Movie about Norway, set in Norway, cast in Norway, a little element of what are you going to do there? And I mentioned that in the review. But then we had that one character be just the shittiest human being ever. And I saw a problem with that because from a representation standpoint, that's problematic. And is this one movie going to completely change societal discourse and cause all sorts of racial fury? No. But if enough of them do, then we do have a problem with representation. It's the same thing that happened with the show Cops. Cops came out, it was huge in the U.S. If you're elsewhere in the world, you haven't heard of it. It's a show that basically followed police officers around. But the problem with it was the way that they were shot and edited. Most of the episodes and most of the segments within were focused on African Americans. and people of color. And it basically put on every television screen in America through this massive show a representative viewpoint of people of color. Hey, we're not saying that all people of color commit crimes, but if you're going to commit a crime, you're probably a person of color. That's the message that it was putting out. And it wasn't doing it with a singular episode. It wasn't doing it with a singular segment of a particular episode. It was doing it in the grand scope of things over the course of years. And that turned into a major problem. That show influenced a lot of white America's viewpoints of minority classes. And so backtracking and talking about this movie, what we're talking about is, as far as why have this type of movie, I say, why not? Why not have a representation viewpoint in which the women are strong and the men are evil? We've had it the other way around, or at the very least, with the big strong hero and the, perpetual victim female class. So often, what's wrong with having a different hierarchy? What's wrong with having a different structure? What's wrong with representing something different? For me, that just kind of speaks to the equity situation that will hopefully ultimately lead us to equality. And there is a counterpoint to that people bring up that I want to address, because I don't think it's really possible, or at the very least responsible, to talk about this kind of thing without bringing this up. But I have a line. I have a limit in terms of equity leading to equality, and that is innocent people truly suffering in the name of equity. And what do I mean by that? I've heard people discuss it in the context of this movie on a number of sides, and there's one in particular that always rubbed me the wrong way. And that was, say, for instance, you are a woman and you overhear or are just outright told by a girlfriend of yours that they falsely accuse somebody of rape. I just said that, calling people out in a position of power for immoral acts and so forth. Well, now we're talking about something where you're potentially in a situation of calling somebody out for an immoral act when they're not in a position of power. And in fact, it is against somebody in a position of power. I've heard the argument in terms of, well, he may be innocent, but he's a man, and historically, just taking the entirety of humanity and putting that on the scales of justice and so forth, he has it coming. That I can't subscribe to. That I am vehemently against. If somebody is innocent and their life is being ruined because of an immoral act, I don't care whether there's a position of power or not, that needs to get called out. If we're talking about situations like affirmative action where minorities need to fill a certain percentage of representation within an employment pool, get over it. That's what I mean by equity leading to equality, is things like that, because that's something that we just need to start embracing and recognizing that is the next step towards equality. It is something that we have had, as I speak now as white men, we have had the power in that situation for far too long. We have taken so many opportunities away, and it's time to change the tide so that ultimately we can all float at the same level. But if somebody's life is being destroyed because of an immoral act of somebody else, that also needs to get called out. That's my line. So I think that the tones, the plot, and the subtext of the movie, I don't have a problem with. I think that they worked really well. I think that it does what good horror does and brings that level of conversation to the forefront so that we can talk like this. And I think that I honestly really enjoyed this movie. I don't think that it was without its flaws. I think that it was too heavy-handed, especially considering that some of that heavy-handedness may have overshadowed a lot of the better, subtle moments that are getting lost in the conversation because everybody's focused on the overt situations. I do hope at some point we can have a reapproach to this movie that I think not everybody, but a significant portion of people that were having an issue with this, I think comes down to the notion that the class of people that they belong to were not shown in a favorable light. And it's easy to see that and become personally offended by it, to become feeling insulted or attacked, that you immediately want to get defensive about it. And I think it's worth being a little more introspective than that. I think it's worth really looking inward, looking at our own individual characters, and recognizing that we may be actively or passively perpetuating the problem that this light is, shining down on. And if we are, and it doesn't match who we want to be, to ask ourselves what would be the next steps to correcting that. So there we go. I don't really have, honestly, a whole lot more to say on this. Heavy topics, heavy stuff. But that's what good movies do. That's what good horror movies do. That's one of the reasons I love them so much, is because they can do this. They can have this level of, they can instill childlike whimsy and joy and marvel at practical effects and such, and they can also get us talking and thinking on this level. So this is definitely one of the more unintentionally deeper videos that I've done. I apologize to anybody that I've offended. I can only stand by my viewpoints. And on that note, if you're going to leave comments on this, I would very much like to hear them. I would love to have discussions on this. The only thing I really ask is that usually I ask that things be polite, and I'm honestly going to hope for that at the very least. But no, I think that in this case, the only thing that I really ask is that you recognize that I am coming at a lot of these things from what I perceive to be a very good place in my heart. And if I am off kilter about anything here that I've said, I welcome the opportunity to constantly be learning and growing and improving. So if you're going to comment on this video, please at the very least keep that in mind, that I will be reading things with an open mind and with the approach of wanting to understand, to learn, and to grow. So thank you very much for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you in my next review. Hopefully it'll be just a little bit lighter, but here we are. Thank you very much. And remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted. So take care.